This is Literary Analysis, Step 4, Focus on Characterization, presented by Overlook Tutorial Academy. To analyze literature, it is essential to study not just the storyline, but also the characters that populate and create the story. Think of any work of literature, and you think of characters. Likeable, hateful, beautiful, important, but above all, memorable, if the work itself is to be remembered. In this article, you will find an overview of the literary types of characters and the purposes they serve in a story. So much of what we can learn about a story comes from listening to the characters, so don't shortchange this focus. Literary conflict. Every story has at least two essential elements: a central character and a problem. The problem is, of course, called the conflict. Conflict is the collision between two opposing motivations. The conflict is what drives the story forward and what essentially causes the changes in the main characters. The conflict can be between, 1, a character and nature, a story of survival against all odds. Think 127 Hours. Or 2, between two characters, the good guy, bad guy stories. Think James Bond. 3, between two sides of a single character, a decision that must be made, a character flaw that gets one in trouble. Think contents of a dead man's pocket. 4, our conflict can be between a character and society, a person going against the assumptions and demands of his or her society. Think Titanic. Number 5, a character in the supernatural, resisting ghosts and the occult. Think True Blood. Number 6, between a character and technology, the fight against the evils of over-mechanization, like Transformers. And finally, number 7, between a character and destiny, a human struggle for personal free will despite fate and expectations. Think, Macbeth. Types of characters. In order to be able to discuss the characters in a piece of literature and to compare characters from more than one work, we need some vocabulary to use in describing them. There are many different terms used for this, covering all sorts of details about the characters. Here are the 3 most important aspects of literary characterization you need to understand. Round versus flat. Some characters in a story we get to know well. We learn what they look like, their backstories, that is, history before the narrative opens, even what they want and why they do what they do. Usually these are the most important characters for sure, but not always. Any character we learn much about is called round. Other characters who inhabit the story without letting us get to know them well are called flat. It is very unusual to have a flat character as one of the main characters. Some depth of characterization is absolutely necessary if we're to learn to care about a character very much. On the other hand, we don't need to know the motivation of a character that enters the story only briefly. Dynamic versus static. All great stories are about change. Things learned, characters refined, decisions made. You can be assured that your most important characters are dynamic. They change or they cause change in others. Static characters, in contrast, do not change. Static characters have their place, but they are almost never the central characters in the story. Look for changes in characters and the reasons for those changes, and you will find the essential points of the story. Developed versus stock. There are some characters we know enough about just because of their profession. For instance, the prissy librarian, the jovial barkeep, the sweet granny, the serious judge. These stereotypical stock characters are very useful in story writing. They don't need a lot of description. A developed character is one that the writer builds, sometimes beginning with a stock character, but then going deeper, farther into his personality and motivations. Quite often, unexpected facets added to a stock character make for delightful, fascinating people in a tale. Major characters. First and foremost, the protagonist. The protagonist, or occasionally protagonists, is our central, sympathetic character. To figure out which is the protagonist, ask yourself two simple questions. Whose story is it? Which character matters the most to us? Who do we care the most about? And the second, which character makes the fateful decision or takes the fateful action that brings the conflict to climax, and then, inevitably, to resolution? When analyzing this character, be sure to make notes about the following. Motivation. What does the protagonist want, need, have to achieve? Note conflict. What is in the way? What does the protagonist think is in the way? Changes. How does the protagonist change, either physically and or in personality? And finally, decisions. Which decision or decisions was or were pivotal to the climax? And now to the antagonist. The antagonist is the character or force that opposes the motivation of the protagonist. Record these things as you analyze. Description, personality, if there is one, and motivations. And that brings us to our subordinate characters. Subordinate characters are many. They are everyone else. However, no character is present just by chance. Each has one or more raison d'être, or reason for being there. These reasons fall into three categories. Number one, a foil. A character who is in the tale to help us learn more about the protagonist. Sidekicks do that, but so do other minor characters who demonstrate personality traits opposite to the protagonist, and so act as mirror images that enhance our understanding of the protagonist. The two little pigs who built their houses of hay and sticks help one see just how smart was the one who used bricks, for instance. Number two, comic relief. The drama of a story is very often interrupted by a funny scene that serves to heighten the overall tension in the piece. Some characters are just humorous by their appearance or personality, and their interaction with the protagonist is a humanizing one that can help keep a hero from being more irritating than sympathetic. And finally, a plot device. A character who moves the story along without being a significant player. For instance, this might be the taxi driver who gets the detective to the crime scene. He is absolutely essential, but we need and get few, if any, details about him. When reading, you should record just a few things about subordinate characters. Name, of course. Description. Personality. Where in the plot they appear, because remember, they're only there briefly. And finally, which purpose does that character serve? Okay, remember that going forward with your analysis, you will rely heavily on your understanding of the roles of the characters. Give this focus all the time that it needs. At this point, You might very well want to go on with our literary analysis step 4 example. Focus on characterization in Frank R. Stockton's short story, The Lady or the Tiger. And as always, if you have any other questions about literary analysis or anything else, feel free to call. Thank you.